Hi, I'm Ryan Manchi with Basis Technologies. We are talking advertising innovation and marketing inspiration, and I'm joined by Brittany Klaus. Klaus, I'm
Hi.
sorry, Klaus, we
Oh,
talked
that's
about
okay.
it. Yeah, Mrs.
That's
Klaus.
okay. Everyone gets it wrong,
Yeah.
I swear. Everyone. It's claws like Santa.
Perfect, yeah. So you head up advertising and social media strategy at United Airlines, and I feel like y'all have had an interesting several years. All of us have, but like as an industry, as a company, faced with some challenges, but air travel is soaring. Can you talk a little bit about what you've seen with some of those changes and how you really approach creating really great branding and storytelling over the maybe last couple of years that you've been with United?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So, absolutely, the travel industry, like all of us, have been through a crazy amount of change. And I think going back to March 2020, I mean, we saw 98% of our customers fall off in a matter of a few days, right? I mean, it was a very interesting time to work in travel. At the time, I was actually at Hilton, but definitely knew and saw a lot of the similarities when I came over to United a little over a year ago. Throughout that time, I think we could have sat on our laurels and said, well, let's just see how this goes. Let's be predictable. And honestly, we didn't. I think we really took the time, at least from an advertising perspective, to think through what do consumers want to hear from travel brands? How do we start to differentiate ourselves in the sea of sameness that is travel, that is aviation, and how to really get to bring consumers over to our side of the table. And I think one thing that we really did with that is start to make our commercials all about our frontline employees. We didn't use actors. It was very intentional to be authentic and use our actual frontline employees as the face of our brand and the face of our Good Leads the Way platform. And it's been really successful for us, not only for consumers, but honestly in positivity for our frontline employees. It's also been very successful.
I love that. And I imagine like early days too, there's like talent shortages, right? So it's like easy to lean into them, but I think, that idea of authenticity and not just the buzzword of like, you got to be authentic, but actually really taking advantage of it. That's awesome. And to be able to empower those employees.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, who knows better about the brand than they are? And if they are happy, our consumers are more happy, our NPS scores will go up, right? And it just sort of filters the engine. So how do we have our advertising do more than just be our advertising to consumers?
Yeah, I love it. So you talk about NPS scores, and that's one piece of it, but y'all sit on like a huge amount of data on your customers, the loyalty information, just even the infrequent travelers as well. How have you been able to take advantage of the data and the insights and have that maybe drive or kind of fuel or kind of like navigate your way through the creative, through the messaging and that brand storytelling?
Yeah, I've been really lucky to work at brands that definitely have a ton of data, right? I mean, especially being a brand where you actually have to use your ID to board a plane. We know exactly who you are, how old you are, right, where you live, all of those things. We also have partnerships with Chase, so we have our co-brand credit card. So we sit on, like you said, a ton of data. I think right now, like a lot of companies are working how to clean that up, how to organize it, how to really try to make sure, because we fully believe that all of our campaigns should be rooted in data and insight, right? So how do we really make sure that we're taking advantage of all of that first party data? And that's really a lot of the work that we're doing right now. I think advertising is so new to United, which is interesting to people every time I say that. We've only been doing it a little over a year, actually. We launched the first brand campaign of this size in a decade last year.
That's incredible.
Which is just incredible for our team. I mean, the amount of change that we've been through since I've been at the company so far in advertising is just incredible. The backing that we have from our leadership is incredible. And it's really just given us the opportunity to make sure, and take a look at the inside and say, what are all of the metrics that we need? What are all the studies we need to set up? We're doing a ton of audience work right now to figure out what are these cohorts of people that we can actually get to switch over to United to make sure we're not wasting our dollar, right? It's the age-old question of if you have that additional dollar, where should you put it? And that's what we're continuing to ask ourselves.
Yeah. Well, and I think it's amazing, like your role, the fact that you're in charge of both the advertising and the social media side, and you talk about, or maybe can you talk about more of the customer journey as you think about the own channels, the social channels, the earned channels, as well as the paid media with the advertising that is newer to the mix. I imagine those others have been there for a while, but what does that customer journey look like, and how you do anything really interesting there?
Yeah, I think, most people, I would assume, in marketing at this point believe that kind of the age-old marketing funnel is sort of out the window,
Sure,
right?
yeah.
We know that it is more of a consumer journey. Consumers are finding us at all different touch points. And how do we make sure that they are being fed the same information or better information, or we start to figure out, this person likes this, how do we feed them a different message?
Yeah.
So we do work really in partnership with all the teams. One interesting thing about our team is that we not only work collaboratively and on one team with our organic social team, we also ladder up into communications. So we work extremely close with our PR team. And I think a lot of, at least PR teams from my history, you work in partnership, but it's two different leaders.
Yeah.
Having the same leader and having the same goals forces different conversations. It forces us to make sure that we are staying in partnership, and that, a PR communication or a paid communication or an earned communication doesn't feel different. And we work in the same way with our Mileage Plus and our email teams. We actually ensure that the look and feel of the creative feels synergistic, because you as a consumer don't know, they sent me an email, or this time I got a social ad, right? You just see United, and are we representing our brand correctly in that way?
Yeah, that's so smart, and I feel like it goes back to the idea of authenticity, where it's like not only tapping into employees, but ensuring that the messaging, that voice is consistent. So that's really smart. That's
Another
incredible.
thing we do with employees, just talking about kind of consistency
Yeah.
and message and authenticity, is we have a whole work stream in leveraging our employees as influencers. So I think, if you go back to, let's call it 5 years ago, I think probably our motto was, employees, don't say anything about United. We're very careful. We want to make sure that what messages are put on our screen. And honestly, our motto at this point is not that. We actually see them as an incredible asset to represent our brand. We work with them. We actually hold a yearly camp to talk to them about best practices and how to best present yourself, and what are the best things to get engagement and to increase reach on your channels. And the teams love it. I mean, the groups that we work with are just incredible from an employee influencer standpoint.
I love that. It's very innovative, and I think progressive as a company to lean into those employees, not just as like a face, but knowing that their voices matter.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
that they can connect and they can solve a lot of those problems for customers, or be those ambassadors to talk about why they love the company and why they fly the airline themselves, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, very cool. So you mentioned you came from Hilton.
Yes.
But then prior to that, you had some different agency gigs.
Yes.
What does that path look like, and maybe what have you learned between the agency world and then the brand side world that you're living in on the client side?
Yeah, great question, and honestly something I probably get asked one of the most things
Okay, all right.
from anyone, which is
lack of original questions.
No,
sorry.
no, not even in interviews. I even mean by just people interested in moving to the brand side, or people that have recently joined my team and come from the agency side. So it is a great question, because I think a lot of people are interested in it. I think, we all think we know a job before we take it, right? I worked a long time on the agency side, worked extremely close with my media clients, and I think when I moved to the brand side, I was so surprised by how little media you start doing sometimes, or at least in comparison to it being 100% of your job, and how much, conversations and storylines and data you're building to ensure you're talking correctly to leadership and stakeholders, and making sure you're bringing everybody along and you have buy-in. And making sure that you are building relationships that are not transactional with your agencies and with your influencers and with people that represent your brand. I think that was really important for me. I look back at my agency time fondly. I loved my time there. I worked with an incredible team at both Spark and MEC. The majority of my time on Taco Bell, which is an awesome brand. Really loved my time doing that. And I look back and think about the incredible training that agency gave me in order to bring over to the brand side, and not only for me to work with my partners at the agency, but also for me to think about how do I actually need to bring up our teams differently. Because I think one thing agencies do really, really well is training their entry-level employees.
That's awesome. That's great. Great perspective. And I feel like you said, sharing that with people that are maybe looking to make the jump, folks internally, how the best way to work with the agencies, and even working with the agencies of like, here's a better way to work with us.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
And I always tell people, give yourself 6 months of breathing room.
Yeah.
I mean, this is probably true for any new job,
Sure.
But especially I think when you make a transition from one part of the business to another.
Yeah. So we're, it's midway through 2023. We are in the wonderful south of France right now. There is lots of conversations about emerging technologies and opportunities. Is there one technology that you feel like is just overblown And then is there another kind of emerging technology that you're actually really excited about and looking to see where United can take advantage of it?
Yeah, I think our industry absolutely loves buzzwords.
Yeah.
I think, right? It's NFTs or it's the metaverse, or right now the term is AI.
Sure.
And I think AI is such a broad term. And this might be a bit provocative to say, but it's not that I think AI is going to die. It's just I think we need to be much more prescriptive about what we're even talking about in AI. AI is such a category. It's not a specific tool. And AI can be a great tool to help us in many ways, but it's not one thing. And I think when we're talking about it, we should stop being so generic and really start to get down to the details of what we mean and how it can actually help that specific area of the business.
I love that. I love that. Yeah, it's kind of like talking like the internet. It's like, sure, the internet's going to change the world, but like different things about it, if we go back, 25, 30 years ago. So is there anything that you all, United, how are you playing around with AI? Are you encouraging your team? Have you yourself open up ChatGPT and have a little fun with it?
Definitely. I think our team has just dabbled in it just to see what is it, right? Obviously, we're curious, we want to know, and I think one of the things I've seen it be really helpful is in building decks and building headlines for things, right? Making sure that they get the point across. I think that's been really helpful. Our United Corporation as a whole invests a lot. We actually have an arm of the business called United Ventures, where we invest in emerging technologies to better our business. So some of them are in how do we make sure that the baggage, how do we invest in the most recent technology to make sure your baggage gets there. So right now we deliver text to folks after they check their bag. They can actually track their bag to see where it is, right? Making sure that we're always innovating in terms of the customer. And that really starts with investing in new and emerging things, right? Some of them turn out great. I'm sure some of them don't. You can ask that team. But, I think it's important to make sure we're always looking at what's next for the consumer, but also talking to the consumer about what we have today. Because it's one thing for companies to always say, well, we're going to do this, we're going to do that. And I think your average consumer wants to know, when I get on your plane today, what do you have for me?
Yeah.
How are you better than the other one? How are you more personable?
Yeah, the consumers are not marketers and they're not looking for the hype of the buzzword, right? They just want to make sure it's a great experience. And I feel like that's such a good, focus, like what you're talking about, that it's like you're not just chasing the buzzwords or like what's new and exciting, sure, exploring it, but being really intentional that, is this going to make a better customer experience? Is this going to be better for our employees? So
chasing the buzzwords, is as good as chasing something thinking it's going to go viral.
Yeah.
You should never do something because you think it's going to go viral. Who knows that? But you can do something cool. You can see a trend and take advantage of it. You can link something back to your brand that makes sense, that people think is cool. I think the best example of that for us right now, I'm not sure if you saw, but a few months ago, we released our Chief Trash Officer announcement, our partnership with Sesame, Oscar the Grouch and Sesame Street. And that was really, how do we, a pillar of us in culture is how do we actually start conversation that wouldn't have existed without our campaign. And that's really where that that campaign kind of falls in that category for us. But really the goal is how do we explain a very complicated subject like sustainable aviation fuel in a way that everyone wants to pay attention to and listen to. Of course, you're going to hire Oscar.
That's amazing. That's amazing. And I think you kind of teed it up there a little bit, but United's got guiding principles, right, that help throughout the company for all the employees. Can you talk a little bit about those and how those are applied and how they impact your job and your team's roles?
Yeah, absolutely. I think every company kind of worth their salt probably has some sort of pillars, right? And what I'll say about United is that they're really a company that walks the walk. They're not just, actually sustainability is a passion point for our CEO, a personal passion. If you ever heard him talk about it, he is very vocal about him believing that sustainable aviation fuel, or SAF, is the future of aviation and how we can actually make that sustainable, right? Electric planes can solve certain things, but SAF can really be the replacement for a lot of the larger issues that we have. While, he's very vocal about carbon offsets not being that solution, because there's not enough room on this earth to plant all the trees that all these companies are promising, right? So how do we make sure, and what's great is because he believes in it so much, we have this backing to talk about sustainability in a way that I think other companies don't, or maybe they don't think that's what drives bookings. And really our philosophy on sustainability, or everything we do with diversity and Aviate Academy, is we actually believe that provides larger brand halo. So, some companies might not think, well, that's direct to bookings today, where we really feel like the long term is actually the game we want to play.
I love it. Yeah, and the fact that you're not having to sell that in, like, hey, sustainability is important. diversity is important, that we need to be doing
Yeah.
it. The fact that it's like part of the foundation of the company, I gotta imagine it just like opens up a world of flexibility and also greater impact and
Yeah.
greater connection with all those the frequent flyers, the infrequent flyers, and those future customers. So.
Yeah, and it's about what messaging goes where, right? I think we look at sustainability and diversity specifically as more of our leadership principles, our broad messaging. Whereas, if we know you're a frequent traveler, we might deliver you a message again that you're caring about what's happening today. We might say, hey, by the way, did you know we don't have any change fees? Oh, by the way, if we know your plane is coming in late, we have this tool called Connection Saver that will actually hold the plane to ensure that you make that connection if we can, and it doesn't impact the passengers.
You sold me. I think I need to switch my allegiance. But yeah, with that, thank you so much. I really appreciate you taking the time to sit down, talk through some marketing innovation, some advertising inspiration. I know I feel inspired by it. So thank you so much, Brittany. Really appreciate your time.
It's been great to be here. Thank you so much.
You.